Joe, how much of a shock was? Sorry.
What would you say, Grady?
How'd you learn the news?
Sean sent out a text this morning to our entire team.
What was your immediate reaction?
You're definitely shocked, surprised. I think, for the guys that have been here for the last few years with him, you're upset. You learned a lot. But there's also, it's one of those things where you're just, grateful for the time, the opportunity that you had with him. We all loved playing for Kenny. Grew a lot as players and as people, and valuable experience. But it's one of those things where the NBA, at the end of the day, it is a business, and stuff like this happens with teammates, coaches, and it's tough, and it's tough to see, but it is the nature of the NBA itself.
Sean said that this was the product of a conversation with Kenny that had been taking place over a few months. Did you get any indication that the team was leaning in this direction at any point in the last couple months or so?
I did not, no. I mean, that's the thing that's, most of these discussions are had between the front office and Kenny, ownership and Kenny. It's not something that they just are filling us in the loop on. Kenny's trying to do his job, do it to the best of his ability, but obviously, this sort of stuff happens on the side, but it's not something that a lot of the players are aware of.
Is there something you could notice about being here a few years, why Kenny would have been the right voice for you guys the last 2-3 years versus why he and Sean would think it's not the right voice anymore?
That's a good question. I think that's something for, Sean and ownership. They obviously felt, that a change in direction was needed. But I think at the end of the day, and he even talked to us about it here this afternoon, Kenny's got his mark all over the Brooklyn Nets in terms of developing a lot of the players that are here, Karis, Spencer, Jarrett, myself. He helped, provide us the opportunity, develop us, get us to a point where we sort of solidified niches in this league. It's unfortunate that he's no longer a part of this organization, but at the end of the day, he has a huge sort of footprint as to what the Nets will hopefully, aspire to become.
Is there a difference in developing? You said it a couple times, developing. Yourself, Spencer, is there a difference in developing guys to the point where they can have a niche in the league and coaching superstars? Is there a difference? It's two different kind of skill sets?
I think, I think you go across this league and you could talk to every coach, every player, and, dealing with a young, up-and-coming team is much different than coaching, superstar players. And everybody kind of realizes that it's a much different dynamic. I wouldn't say that's particularly the reason why, we're in this position right now, but, it is different. It's the same thing as coaching a team that has young, hungry players versus a team with championship expectations. A team, you look back to last year or even the previous years with the Nets, a lot of us were just young players learning through a lot of mistakes where, our young players right now can't really afford that opportunity, because you have championship aspirations, playoff aspirations, and just the margin for error is not necessarily as big.
And so now that you have this different group of veterans, did you sense any more resistance at times to Kenny during the year than you saw over the past 3 years?
No, not at all. Kenny has always been great with the players. I think sort of his level of understanding just in terms of emotional intelligence and knowing how to coach specific guys has always been a strong point for him. And he seemed like every guy in the locker room had a huge level of respect for him. He's a personable guy at the end of the day too. People just enjoyed being around him and playing for him.
Joe, how did your conversations with Kenny develop as you were kind of developed into a proper star this year? You got a big free agency coming up. Did you feel like you had kind of been cooked in the system and ready to go? And did you have back and forth with him about, I don't need more developing, I deserve minutes, I'm ready to go?
I think I look back just to, when I first got here, him sort of me very similar to a lot of the guys that were here when he was first here, just allowing us the opportunity to kind of play through mistakes, learn, grow as players. Him sort of being transparent as to what he wanted your role to be or what he thought your role could be, where he thought that your strengths were, where he thought he should develop you. All that stuff kind of, I guess, has morphed me into the player that I am right now. And, I think a lot of the, growth that I've had as a player and as a person can be attributed to him and his coaching style over these last few years.
You've talked a lot about his transparency and how much that's meant to you. Does there come a point when transparency breeds more transparency and the players start to build that into their culture and be very transparent back to a coach?
Yeah, but I think that's what you want at the end of the day. I mean, you want people to be honest with one another, and when there's something that's bothering you or anything like that, you kind of want it to be brought to the table. You don't want people to be passive aggressive within the organization. I think that's sort of, something that's sort of been built in within the Nets organization, where we have a lot of good communication with one another. There's a constant dialogue between the players and the coaches. It's one of those things where it was certainly like an open door policy. If there's ever anything that was bothersome to any of the guys, whether it's playing time, scheme, whatever it might be, Kenny and the rest of the staff was always making sure that each guy on the team knew that they could go and engage and be open about whatever was on their mind.
Joe, is there any sense that this was results oriented despite all the injuries and things that this team's had to deal with?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't really comment on that because it's not necessarily my position. I think Sean and ownership, they obviously, I don't know what the exact reasoning is behind it. You're gonna have to talk with them. I'm sure he addressed it in his presser, but I think coming into the season, obviously we had a higher level of expectations than we'd had in years past, and with that becomes definitely a little bit more pressure. But at the end of the day, I mean, you talk with Kenny, talk with Sean, it does seem like the decision was a mutual decision. It wasn't in just one side or the other.
Did you notice any, because you brought up it being a mutual decision, did you notice any change in him from the beginning of the season to now? Just because he started the season seeming so excited about the direction of the team and where everything's going.
No, it's one of those things where it's not like, I mean, you spend a lot of time with him, obviously, but it's not one of those things where Kenny is, wearing his emotions on his sleeve. I don't know when he's disappointed or upset. He's the kind of guy where he's just a good leader where, he's always kind of keeping his composure around us.
For
Sean
this to
said
happen
that-
after Kenny gets a contract extension, is there a sense that nobody's safe, that anybody can go at any time?
Yeah, but that's the nature of the NBA. You look across this league, players, coaches, front office, everybody. It's not like there's a lot of job security in the NBA.
Sean said that got to a point where there was a new voice needed in the locker room, and he said Kenny told him that his voice wasn't carrying the same weight in here that it used to. I'm curious then, if it's, you say you can't say whether it's results oriented, but then do you guys collectively feel like you let Kenny down if you guys weren't absorbing his voice the same way that you had a year ago, 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. I think, at the end of the day, the coaches, the system that we have has been pretty consistent since Kenny has been here. And I think, a lot of our season up to this point, you can't put the blame necessarily on the coaches. The blame goes all the way around. The players, some of us, haven't performed as well as we had in the past, or grabbed on to, the philosophy or whatever it might be. I think, it's sort of been an up and down year to this point, and I don't think you can put it necessarily on Kenny or any of the coaches. I think obviously everybody as a whole has to take ownership of it, but at the end of the day, we're the ones that, go on the court every night, and I think a lot of our losses at this point in our junction in the season can be attributed to more intangible stuff like getting outworked or not being competitive enough.
All right, guys, thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks.